Ay, Nicaragua, Nicaragüita, la flor más linda de mi querer, abonada con la bendita Nicaragüita, sangre de Diriangén. Ay, Nicaragua, sos más dulcita que la mielita de Tamas. Pero ahora que ya sos libre, Nicaragüita, yo te quiero mucho más. Pero ahora que ya sos libre, Nicaragüita, yo te quiero mucho más.
I was living in Managua, in a neighborhood called Colonia Centro America, which is a middle class neighborhood. Um, so I was there with my family, with my parents, and my siblings.
How did it impact your daily life?
Well, in 1978, 1979, which were the two last years of the dictatorship, I was 12 and 13, so I was quite aware of what was happening in my country. Um, and of course, I felt also the tension, the overall sense of rejection about the system. The majority of people, I would say, by that time were against this government and this military system led by Somoza and his group. So it did affect my everyday life because I was constantly exposed to news and conversation among adults, and also because the conflict, the military conflict was ongoing, especially in rural areas, and every month more present in urban areas as well. To the point that in my own neighborhood as well, we had some combats that happened.
You were quite young then. Were you part of any protests or demonstrations? Did you know anyone who was?
Yes, yes. I was part of one, um, along with my family and most of my neighbors in my street. We participated in a street protest using um, kitchen utensils, pans and pots to make noise and protest against the system. And I never forget this evening when happened that because when the militaries came to repress and dissolve the protest, my father uh, was kind of behind the group, and should I keep going? So I can't forget that night because my father was behind the group. He waited until all especially the little ones who were on the street protesting as well, went back to their houses, and because of that, he was detained by the militaries and attacked. I mean, hit and beaten by the militaries, and we were very scared because of that. We couldn't do that. We saw that he was detained, and um, we were not able to help him or do something. Finally, he was released, injured but released. Um, and that night also, the military killed someone in my neighborhood who were also in the same protest, a woman who was in this protest. So there was a constant ways of demonstrating the discomfort of people. Yeah.
How did art have an influence on the movement?
Arts, I would say a lot. I would say there were many artists who joined their voices along with the rest of the society, the social group organizations, saying that they were we were all fed up by this military oppressive system. And particular, I would say poets and some songwriters and painters and those kind of artists were very vocal, very expressive through their work on denouncing the historical injustice in my country, and also denouncing the way the government and military mistreat people and violated human rights.
How is art more accessible to the citizens, and what about it made an impact on the movement?
Say again?
How is art more accessible to the citizens, and what about it made an impact on the movement?
If the art was accessible, yes, it was. I mean, not completely accessible because many of these art expressions were censored by the government. Um, so I remember we had neighbors who had to hide their long plays. The past time there were this long play disc with I remember very well this artist Luis Enrique Mejia Godoy, one of the Mejia Godoy's family artists, songwriter who was in Costa Rica because he couldn't go back to our country because of the repression. So he kept this family kept a long play of him with songs that were directly denouncing this Somoza dictatorship, and so no, it wasn't easy to. I mean, you couldn't openly access to these arts forms because of the repression, but people figured out ways to access this, to listen, to see, to also in universities. For people who were in university, I think there were more opportunities to share different ways of expressing their discomfort through art.
Yeah. Gracias.
De nuevo quieren manchar mi tierra con sangre obrera, los que hablan de libertad y tienen las manos negras.
I was born 6 days after the military forces took the control of my country in Chile. So it was a really hard time to come to this world. And but I think for my parents were very difficult. My father used to work at the government of Salvador Allende. His brother actually was the mayor of Santiago, the capital of Chile, and many of my father's friends were detained. So it was difficult. So I grew up under the dictatorship, so I didn't realize until I was like 10 or 12 years old.
You were quite young then, so were you part of any protests or demonstrations, or did you know anyone who was?
There were a lot of protests. I remember that. I would say that when I was like 14 years old, I took part of this protest. But the big one was in 1989, so by that time I was like 16 years old, because the General Pinochet called for a referendum to the people to decide if they wanted to continue with the dictatorship or if they wanted to have like open elections. So that year, especially 1989, was very active year for everyone, and I was in high school, so I remember being part of all these different demonstrations. It was something about sí and no, or yes or not. Sí meant we want to continue with the legacy of Pinochet. We want you to continue leading our country, and no meant no, we want open elections. We want to get back to our democracy. Yeah.
Which protest artists made the biggest impact on your community?
I think there's a big name, Victor Jara. He was theater director, he was a poet, and he was a musician, a singer. He was like kind of musical ambassador of Salvador Allende's government. He traveled around the world showing his art, his music, but always like in the name of Salvador Allende. So his figure was strongly related to Allende, and he was killed a few days after the dictatorship took the power in my country. He was tortured. Actually, he was tortured and he was killed. So immediately he became into like a kind of icon, like a symbol of the resistance against the dictatorship. Even today, I think Victor Jara is the most, for many young artists, is the main figure in not only in Chile but in, I would say, in Latin America.
How is art more accessible to the citizens? Like, how was it able to affect their lives more than other forms of protest, or how is it not?
You mean, sorry, can you tell me again the question?
So how was art more relatable to the citizens? How could they relate to the art? How did it help them protest?
You mean the artists?
Yeah.
Well, for artists they were very difficult time. You know, in the music field, for example, they weren't able to play some instruments, for example. Instruments like charango, this small Indian guitar, or zampoñas were banned. So for musicians, especially, it was very difficult times. They couldn't show their art to the people. The only way was basically getting the tapes, the cassette tapes, because all these artists, the main musicians from that time, went into exile to Europe. So they developed their career, the musical career there. The only way to know what they're doing was through these cassette tapes. We didn't have real like artists in Chile in those times, in the 80s especially. All of them went outside. Yeah.
Thank you.
I was in Guatemala City.
How did it impact your daily life?
During the end of the dictatorships, I was in middle school, and my middle school was in the downtown, and it was managed by the Sister of the Charity of Saint Vincent of Paul, and at that point, many of the religions orders were involved or believed to be involved in the guerrilla, and so sometimes when I was walking from the bus stop to the school, the paramilitaries would stop me and search my bags and take everything out, which was for a 14 years old. It was really hard to be searched on the street. And another time also I saw like people, like a bomb exploding like 10 feet from me, and people start running, and I was walking to the bus stop, and I have just to run, and I was lucky that a bus was at the corner and just jumping, and but I was shaking. And also our school was next to the medical school, so and uh, the students from the national university were involved also in the against the dictatorship. So sometimes they will come, and the militaries will break into this medical school and throw bombs, and we have to have a lock in the school and wait for everything to dissipate. And so, or we will stay. It was kind of a stress, and some sometimes torturous, because I remember one of these times, the mom of a friend, a classmate friend of mine, died while she was going to the school. A bullet reached her and died. That was when you are a teenager. It's really hard.
Yeah. Were you part of any protests or demonstrations, or did you know anyone who was?
I wasn't. Yes, I knew there were many, especially friends of my sisters, like who were already in college, which were the majority of people protesting, um, who were in these events. And also, like we will say, like as a family, we, same as other countries in Central America, we protest and knocking, banging pots and pans against the governments.
Did the government pay attention to these demonstrations? And
Uh,
in what way did they react?
I not really. I guess they were immune to them, and but it was a little bit of pressure. Like at least we feel like we were doing something.
What motivated people most to rally?
Um, the killings in the rural area, all the people being affected up there and having to flee their communities.
Do you know of any protest artists that made a big impact on your community?
There were several artists and in Guatemala. There wasn't like people who was really famous, but there were a lot. Like in the mid 80s, when I started um, the college, most of the buildings at the National University had murals of protest against all the military regiments that we have had before. By then, we had already a democratic government, our first democratic government. But you can still see the traces of what had happened before. And we have Alush Nawal. It was a rock protest group who sing Alto el Fuego, Stop the Fire, um, eh, against the Central America people. It was really famous, and there were also um, play, places in town where people will meet and to talk about art and protests and how to express themselves with music or paints. And I guess I would say Carlos Merida was one of them, and he was older, but I think he did some murals in the by then the financial area of Guatemala City.
Can you describe their unique style and how they were able to impact the community?
I I guess you see, like with the murals, you see how things are has been doing and what had been happening all this time. And like basically you can see people like who had been attacked and bombs exploding. Um, Guatemala City wasn't affected It was mostly in the rural area. Our work, this was different than the other countries in Central America, where the capital cities were affected. In our case, it didn't. And the music, even when it was mostly directed to the young people and in the city, I think it make people more conscious and trying to protest against these governments.
Which demographic group, which sort of group of people, like young or old, do you think most were able to protest or were most able to show their anger?
It was the young people, mostly college students who, high schooler and college students who were protesting. And we have a famous um, oh, like leader who was killed by the government. Um, I don't remember his name in this, but who actually was killed by his uncle who was in power.
Which protest artists had the biggest impact on you, and how do you admire them? What do you like about them?
For me, maybe because I think Guatemalans are like we have a lot of rhythm, so music impacts us. I guess Alush Nawal who came later impacted me. It was one of my time, like big music that we really liked it and make conscious in me. And I think maybe because of that, I went into the non-government NGO sector to work and trying to help people in the communities. I work a lot, like after all of these things happen, with the repatriations of all the refugees from Guatemala and Mexico.
Do you see good art as being able to communicate social and political messages to the public? If so, why?
I think definitely, like visual things make an impact in people. We can see just like with Sesame Street, like kids learn from a lot more from drawings. So when you see mural, gives you an idea what happened during these years in a country. It's the same with the music. The music just make you feel and give you a sense of what happened, even when you didn't really suffer as much as the people in the rural area who had to leave everything behind and start from zero in a new country.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ay, Nicaragua, Nicaragüita, la flor más linda de mi querer, abonada con la bendita Nicaragüita, sangre de Diriangén. Ay, Nicaragua, sos más dulcita que la mielita de Tamagas. Pero ahora que ya sos libre, Nicaragüita, yo te quiero mucho más. Pero ahora que ya sos libre, Nicaragüita, yo te quiero mucho más.
vive Nicaragüita, yo te quiero mucho más, pero ahora que ya sos libre Nicaragüita, yo te quiero